Good day, viewers, and welcome to the season finale of Straight Talk Debate. My name is Jemima Ndebele, and I'll be your moderator for today's debate. Now, for all of our new viewers, welcome, and for all of our returning viewers, thank you for tuning in to the finals today. Today is going to be so different and so exciting, as the motion is something that many of our viewers will find quite unorthodox, as is the style of today's debate, as we will have a presidential style debate with only one of the two learners from the representing schools debating and being the speakers today. So, before we get into the fun part, let's get into the technicalities of today's debate. Firstly, there will be two segments, opening speeches and closing speeches. For the opening speeches, they will be 7 minutes long, with the floor opening for POIs with a single clap at the first minute and closing for POIs at 6 minutes with a double clap. After that, after the 7 minutes are over, the debaters will then be clapped off continuously. The same applies for the closing segment. However, the closing segment will be shorter, as it will be 5 minutes long only, with the floor opening for POIs at the first minute with a single clap and closing for POIs with a double clap at the 4th minute. Debaters will then be clapped over, be clapped off of the podium with a continuous clap at the end of the 5 minutes. Now, viewers, we know that you've been commenting and you have been watching and repeatedly making sure that you keep up with your favorite speaker. Therefore, today we will be announcing our Public's Choice Awards as well as the Best Speaker Award. But please do stay tuned, because when we come back, we'll be diving into the fun part, giving you the motion for today. Welcome back, viewers. As promised, we will be sharing the motion shortly. But before we get into that, for Team Proposition, we have George Biwango as our speaker from the they're the new school. They're the new kids in the block, and they have killed it since the beginning. So George Biwango will be the speaker from Chairman Zedong, and from the reigning champions, we have Ara David, and you might have seen these faces in the previous season in 2021, but they're back and they're better. So, as promised, following the staggering increase in fuel and sugar prices over the past couple of weeks that have shocked the nation, the motion for this week reads as follows: This House supports Namibia cutting all imports, and becoming fully self-reliant. Most of you viewers might not agree with that, but please be sure to comment and tell us what you think about this motion and what your views are pertaining to the motion. Now, without further ado, I'd be calling upon George Biwango, as speaker from Team Proposition, to present his case.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be back. The motion for today's debate states that this House believes that Namibia should cut all imports and become fully self-reliant. Self-reliance is the ability to depend on yourself to get things done and to meet your own needs. An example of self-reliance is growing your own food. To import means bringing in goods or services into a country from abroad to sell. Now what this means is that we as Team Proposition plan on cutting off all imports, which is the receiving of goods from other countries, and becoming fully self-reliant, which means we will not depend on these countries and rather become more independent. These can be very scary when you think of it on an economical level, but we are here to thoroughly explain how this would benefit our country both economically and socially. Jumping on to the economic part, we will achieve independence. We will achieve full independence in all aspects. Our aim as a country is to achieve full independence in all aspects. Namibia as a country is increasingly dependent on other countries of distant areas for even basic needs like food and clothes. A recent article in the Namibian explains how Namibia imported over 100 million worth of 100 million Namibian dollars worth of maize in January alone. 96% of this comes from South Africa and the other 4% come from Zambia. Yes.
Seeing as Namibia is dependent on other countries because it does not have the ability to produce for itself, how then do you deal with the issue of Namibia not being able to produce goods for itself?
Now that's a very relevant question, as I will answer that in my speech. Ladies and gentlemen, the only reason resources are bought internationally is because it is not produced locally. Namibia is not a country short of the required resources for the production of these products. We have subsistence farmers producing maize at a low scale. Why don't we as a country begin to produce this at a larger scale and sell it to make our own profit? And cut off the loss of our money on simple products such as maize, which can really be produced in our own country. Locally grown food creates important economic opportunities, provides health benefits as the food is not traveling a long distance, which could lead it to rotting, and helps to reduce the environmental impact. It also helps bring the community together and gives people the opportunity to make a difference. Namibia has many talented people. Instead of importing the products, why don't we focus on employing our citizens to make these products themselves, which will in fact decrease the country's unemployment rate by a substantial amount and surely increase the country's economic growth as the employment has gone up. We will put our farmers to work, we'll put our farmers and land to work for the production of food, such as fruits, vegetables, and meat products, which can therefore be exported to make more money and surely increase the country's GDP. Ergo, full independence will be achieved in all aspects, and we will stand strong and united as a country, as we do not depend on anyone else for these products. This is what we as Team Proposition want. In my earlier argument, I mentioned how this could increase our GDP. GDP will increase because imports are cut off while exports are increased, which basically means more money for our country and less money lost, which could also lead to faster development of the country as more money is received from exports, which we can use for the construction of greater infrastructure. The above mentioned can also create employment for Namibian citizens. Labor importation may affect Namibians negatively. A minimal percentage of Namibia's workforce comes from other countries. For example, many scientists in Namibia are from other countries, and this leads our graduates to be jobless because Team Opposition prefers the import of labor force. But if we were to cut off all imports, we could employ our graduates and help them build a better future for the country. This would also encourage many learners sitting at home to go into university and increase the country's literacy rate because they are now certain of actually getting a job. Both these factors can also decrease the country's crime rate as youngsters will now be forced off the streets and actually go to their preferred university to get their preferred jobs. Trucks that smuggle in drugs through the importing of other products will also be decreased. As we all know, there are certain substances not allowed into our country, but yet trucks that import these certain products also smuggle the illegal substances. In conclusion, I have provided you on how this could benefit the country economically, hence why we should cut off all imports and become self-reliant. Social benefits. It brings the community together. Local farmers often develop a close network between themselves as well as among the local buyers. As a consumer, you can purchase directly from a farmer, from the farmer through farmers market or directly on the farm. This builds relationship among the community members and the Namibians in basic, which fosters a sense of belonging and togetherness within your area. It empowers the consumer. Consumers are growing increasingly concerned with where and how their food is being produced. They now have the choice to purchase food locally and learn more about food production directly from the farmers themselves. It's a a great learning experience for children who can develop their knowledge about food systems and agriculture. It encourages cultural diversities. Many local farmers are beginning to specialize in producing culturally diverse foods that support a wide variety of diets and cultural food customs. Producing a diverse range of food types from different heritages helps create inclusion with the community. It also encourages consumers to try and enjoy new foods. Now, we as Team Proposition have provided you with legitimate proof as to how this can help our country economically and socially. Economically means it will increase our money, and we as a country need money to function because we are nothing without money. Now, when we import the products, we are actually losing money. I mean, look at this. We've spent 10 million Namibian dollars on a simple product such as maize, guys. Maize can be produced on our own land. Is it the land we lack? No, it's not. Is it the seeds we lack? No, it's not. Is it the people? No, it's not. We have all the required resources. So why aren't we producing this ourselves? Thank you very much.
What a way to open the finals. My goodness, what a thought-provoking argument there from first speaker of Team and only speaker from Team Proposition, George Biwango. Now we hear what Ara David has to say in his case defense.
Panel, we need to understand and we need to take note that side proposition have already lost today's debate because they failed to proper frame today's debate, and furthermore have failed to analyze how cutting or how directly cutting imports actually links to fully or self-reliance from Namibia, right? So ladies and gentlemen, what are you gonna get from my speech, right? First of all, you're gonna get rebuttals. You're gonna get the rebuttals, and second of all, you're gonna get the recharacterization because side proposition fully fails to actually characterize today's motion, right? And the third thing you're gonna get in my speech today is the arguments, right? So ladies and gentlemen, moving on to my recharacterization, right? We feel like some proposition has failed to characterize the Namibian economy as a whole, right? They give us a perfect world where the Namibian economy does this, growing maize and whatnot. So let me paint you the picture on the ground, right? What does the Namibian economy look like, right? The Namibian economy is a bad economy, an economy that has no manufacturing sector, an economy that nobody wants to invest in, an economy that is poorly represented or that is junk started and nobody and has that doesn't actually have a good reputation, right? In terms of actually manufacturing sector, right? We feel like the Namibian economy cannot even produce toothpicks. How do they then move to produce cars, right? How do they then move to produce phones, right? So that side proposition gives us a picture perfect world where the country is then self-reliant. But we feel like even when a country is self-reliant, a country does not have all resources and a country does not have all raw materials, and that's why imports come in. And a country cannot then directly decide to cut off imports, and even when they cut off imports, they do not become self-reliant, right? What then happens is that they cut out or they are isolated from the global economy, and I'll say that in my arguments, right? So the second thing that we characterize as side opposition is what is a self-reliant country like? We feel like a self-reliant country is a country that lives in a developed world, right? A country that has far-reaching trading networks with the global economy, right? A country that knows, the country that has both imports and exports under control, right? A country that can produce sufficiently for its people, right? And a country that is able to create employment at the end of the day, right? A country that can that is transitional in terms of industrial revolutions, right? A country that's in the fourth industrial revolution, unlike Namibia, right? Namibia isn't even in the fourth industrial revolution, and with that, we feel like Namibia is then unable to actually work on or produce its own goods, right? So ladies and gentlemen, moving on to my rebuttals, right? What we get from side proposition, we get economical benefits that do not actually exist, right? Side proposition tells us that when Namibia will actually become fully independent and whatnot, but we feel like when Namibia then cut imports, the global economy or the international trade, the whole international body will then decide to retaliate retaliate, right? And I'll say that they will retaliate by cutting off our exports, right? And we will have no source of income, right? What country, why would you then attack the South African economy? Because we then import, like you mentioned, 96% of our imports come from South Africa, meaning nearly 200 billion is spent for imports from South Africa. What then happens that means that when you cut off imports, you directly attack the South African economy, and the South African economy then stops importing from Namibia, right? And at the end of the day, the Namibian economy suffers as a whole. The little that we export, we lose. So we have no benefits at the end of the day. In terms of social benefits, right? He tells us about a perfect world where people actually have social benefits, such as they're working together and a sense of belonging, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that that's not necessarily true, right? Because when you actually, it has no social benefits, because what you bring about in our economy is food insecurity, right? We do not have enough food, and Namibia does not have capacity to produce this food at the end of the day, right? Moving on to my first argument, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we need to understand that you isolate Namibia economically, right? So first of all, how do you isolate Namibia economically? We need to understand that when you cut off imports, there will be non-existent, and we won't be able to access services or products that can necessarily be produced in Namibia, such as cars, ladies and gentlemen, such as cell phones, ladies and gentlemen, and some foods, right? And even petrol or raw materials that can be directly found in Namibia, right? We need to understand. So why should we care about? Okay, why should we care about this, right? We need to. We need to care. We should care because because the world is based on networking, and when Namibia is isolated economically, that puts Namibia in a position where Namibia can actually make any economical moves, and Namibia can develop as a whole, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, my second argument is that it will cause retaliation and diplomatic tension, right? So, what do we mean by that? So, why is that true, right? We feel like when you then attack many economies directly by cutting imports, they then decide to retaliate, or they then decide to retaliate by doing what? Cutting off the little that they import from Namibia, and we lose our income from our exports, right? And at the end of the day, this causes diplomatic tension, whereby Namibia cannot sit with other member states of SADC, because Namibia has then decided to attack the member states of SADC directly, and they decided to attack the economies of these member states, right? And why should we care about this, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we have to understand that in terms of actually developing economically or politically, we need to have what we call international trade, right? International trade is what brings development, and when we cut off international trade, we cut off development, and Namibia at the end of the day isn't going to be able to actually develop if we get this retaliation and diplomatic tension, right? So, what is my third point is that we further harm the Namibian economy more, right? How do we harm the Namibian economy more? We feel like when you this will be explained further in my second speech, and the third point that I'll also explain, even if we then decide to cut off imports and start producing, where do we get the market? These people are unemployed and cannot afford to actually buy the locally produced goods, right? At the end of the day, we do not have a market, and Namibia doesn't have a market, and we cannot sell these goods and services that we produce locally, and since we are losing our exports income, we then also lose the little income that we will have surplus of goods within our economy that have no market and have no consumers, right? And also, with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to oppose, actually. Thank you.
Wow. As a moderator, I must say I'm cut in half here, because after hearing that opposing argument, I certainly don't know where I stand. Viewers, let's hear what you think. Please do make sure to type in the comments, and we will be sure to engage your thoughts at the end of today's episode. I can't believe we're nearing the end of today's episode. Therefore, I'd like to call upon George Biwongo once more to present his closing argument.
Okay, we're back. Now, Team Proposition decided to go straight for our heads and cut our necks off. We lost because we do not fully explain self-reliance. Self-reliance was explained by myself. We explain self-reliance as the ability to depend on yourself and to get things done and meet your own needs. And also they mentioned if Namibia already has a bad economy, Namibia already has a bad economy. Now, team opposition failed to tell us how this would help our economy, which we provided. And they say we paint a picture-perfect world. Now, people, let me tell you about an iPhone. When you're about to buy an iPhone, Steve Jobs paints the picture of an iPhone to be perfect. He paints it to be a phone that will relieve all your needs. Now, we are telling you that once we become self-reliant, we will relieve all your needs. And also, self-reliance does not include both export and import. That's what team opposition mentioned. They mentioned that to become self-reliant, we need both exports and import. Now we told you specifically why we do not need import, because it will increase our economy, increase the GDP, and you failed to tell us how this would actually increase our economy. Failed to prove how we wouldn't be able to explain we can be self-reliant. Do you, as team opposition, not want a picture-perfect world? Do you want to live in a world where there is constant crime and constant gender abuse? We as team opposition are telling you how we would help the country and to become a perfect country, because we all want to live in a perfect world. Cause retaliation. Now, they said we will cause retaliation amongst the people of the SADC. Now, actually, once you become self-reliant, you'll be known as the unique country. You'll be known as the country that stands by itself. So people will actually look up to you and maybe also become self-reliant. So explain to me how exactly we will cause retaliation. Are you telling me that the SADC countries will go against us because we are becoming self-reliant? And also people are unemployed, which was under their third point. They say that people are already unemployed and this is already harming Namibia's economy. Now, if people are unemployed, what do you as team opposition plan to do? What do you plan to do about the unemployed people? Do you plan to keep on bringing in labor imports? Do you plan to keep on bringing in other people from other countries to come and work for you instead of putting your own people to work? And also they said we have no manufacturing sector. Ladies and gentlemen, a manufacturing sector doesn't just pop up overnight. It develops. Our manufacturing sector is developing. Every country needed to develop to become fully developed. They said we have no raw materials. We do not have raw materials. We do not have raw materials. We have resources. Resources which can be turned into finished products which we can finally use to our own benefits. International retaliation with South Africa will not seriously affect us, as South Africa is the neighboring country, is our closest country. In fact, we helped each other during the war. So why would they want to leave us now just because we decided to make our own money? And also the development. They said we failed to fully define development. Now, development is the growth and betterment of a certain society or group. So we do not need exports or imports to become developed. We will be developed because we are bettering our society, and we are also growing it. Thank you. I rest my case.
What a way to close a case. Brilliant stuff there from the Newcomers. Thank you, George, for that. Now we'll be calling upon Ara David from Hage Geingob High School for his closing segment.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start off by actually answering a very important question from side proposition. Side proposition asks us what we then think or what we then plan to do about employment, right? Ladies and gentlemen, we feel like what we then plan to do about employment is actually by actually developing the manufacturing sector does not require you to cut off imports. That's all we are saying, right? And we feel like side proposition, by cutting off imports, you further harm the economy, and I've stated that before, right? Because you harm the economy in terms of actually the retaliation that you get from different states, right? And we feel like you also discourage different states from actually investing in Namibia, right? Because at the end of the day, why would the South African government then want to actually invest in the Namibian economy? We also have to understand that you further way chase multinationals, right? We have to understand that we have shops such as ShopRite within our countries, right? And ShopRite produces its own goods, right? And when you then decide to cut off this produce, you then mean that ShopRite, Coca-Cola, Pick and Pay should all pack and leave, right? What do you then do with all those people that are employed by those entities, right? You then leave them on the streets again. They do not have jobs and they cannot provide for their families, and you fail the economy as a large, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I feel like I've dealt away with that point, right? They also tell us from their side of the house that they produce maize. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you then do when you only produce maize, right? What happens to the other things such as cell phones? You don't tell us. What happens to the other things such as transportation? You do not tell us. What then happens to things such as rice? You cannot develop the manufacturing sector by cutting off imports. It doesn't work like that. There are different ways to do it, and by doing it is by encouraging foreign investments, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, why does simple side proposition actually lose today's debate, right? They lose today's debate because they actually do tell us a little bit, but they do not actually fully analyze or characterize or give us a certain criteria as to what a self-reliant country is. And by telling us the Namibian economy, I've told you how bad the Namibian economy is and how the Namibian economy cannot basically transition from what it looks like today and how it looks like today into what they want, right? It's practically impossible. They're selling us Western dreams that do not exist at the end of the day, right? Not even any Western country that is fully developed or lives in a fourth industrial world is what so self-reliant by what cutting off imports. It doesn't work like that. Ladies and gentlemen, the most powerful economies still import from different countries, and it doesn't work like that. And you cannot achieve sustainability or reliance in that manner, right? They also tell us how we're gonna be known as a unique country. We're gonna be known as a selfish country that directly attacks other economies and what then happens is that nobody wants to export from us. We have competitors. Many countries actually do produce fish, and when South Africa then realizes that when we're not actually importing from them, we then move away from their imports. Why would they then take fish from Namibia rather than taking fish from another country that produces fish who is still importing from South Africa? They would then want, because you as Namibia decide to breach the trade agreements, why would they keep their side of the house? They will retaliate and they will not want to actually buy any products from Namibia, right? They also tell us about they also tell us about how manufacturing sector has to be developed. We tell you that in the manufacturing sector can only be developed when we have investments, but you guys do not actually tell us. We tell you that the solution is by gaining foreign investments, but you guys do not tell us how you then gain investments if the Namibian economy doesn't have the money, nor does it have the capacity to actually fund what you guys are talking about. You don't tell us how to pull in the foreign investors. You don't tell us how to pull in the money that we actually need to develop your picture perfect world. So with that, you guys lose today's debate, right? In terms of burdens, right, ladies and gentlemen, what team wins today's debate is a team that is a team that does that actually proves how the self-reliance actually, how self-reliance is linked to cutting imports. We tell you, and we tell you why. We tell you why cutting off imports isn't the answer, and how cutting off imports doesn't help anyone at the end of the day. It doesn't help the economy, right? And you guys do not tell us exactly how it helps the economy. You guys tell us we are importing less, but you guys don't tell us where will we get the money then? Where does the income come from? Fine, we're keeping our money in our country because we are not importing goods, but where do we actually get money to keep if the exports are also cut, right? You also tell, and then also the second burden is that who maintains Namibia's significance in the global economy? Who then maintains the production or the import of diamonds from foreign countries from Namibia? We maintain that in our world because we maintain that in our world because we do not want to have diplomatic tension, right? And we also maintain the current employment rate by keeping ShopRite, Pick and Pay, and Coca-Cola. And you guys totally disregarded in today's debate, right? And ladies and gentlemen, the main reason why team side proposition loses is what I've highlighted today. And why team side opposition wins is because we have told you what we needed to tell you in today's debate. We have given you a proper solution, and we have also proven how cutting off imports does not actually bring forth self-reliance, right? And side proposition with that, side proposition has failed in and all, right? So ladies and gentlemen, with that, I am proud to oppose. Thank you.
brilliant argument there from side opposition. I think I finally understand what Nelly Furtado meant when she said, "Why do all good things have to come to an end?" Sadly, viewers, we'll now be going on a quick break as our adjudicators quickly deliberate on their findings, and then after the break, they'll present it.
If you're feeling how I'm feeling and you know I won't stop, all we gotta do is take our love to the top. If I got it and you want it and you'll never let it drop, all we gotta do is take our love to the top. I will ride for you, baby, even die for you. When I'm loving you, but my heart don't stop.
Okay, thank you very much for the insightful debate. My name is Twapera Shemongoba, and I'm here to give the feedback and just an overview about what essentially took place in today's debate. I'll also be announcing the winner alongside with the best speaker for today's debate. So to start off, just to quickly dive into the debate, I was joined by my panelist, Ms. Eva, and in today's debate, we looked at three main issues and we looked at what we got from the side of the House. We look at the matter of self-reliance, right? From this side of the House, they tell us that no, it means becoming independent within your own country and essentially doing things on yourself, producing your own food and producing general essentials that you need to continue and keep your country running. While from this side of the House, we hear that no, self-reliance can also occur in as much as you still receive import. It doesn't necessarily mean cutting off all ties within a country, but it just essentially means having investors to come in and also help administer the country as a whole, but essentially at the same time also producing your own goods and having people from other countries come in to join as a whole, as a global community, to then increase, income and etc. I'm just going to go through what we heard from both sides, then I'll tell you which clashes I looked at and why a specific house won that clash. The second clash, we speak about international relations. This side of the House tell us that no, international relations are important, that's what I mean, because at the end of the day, you need each other in order to win, you know. We import oil, you import uranium from us. It's a mutual relationship that we have occurring in between the two countries, and that's why it's important. The side of the House tells us that no, in as much as international relations are important, we also believe that a country can't retaliate by virtue of you trying to make an income for your own country, or standing your ground, or standing on your own feet. That's what we get from this side of the House in terms of international relations. And the last clash we looked at was the economy, and I think that's the most important clash. Which debate will win? Which debate will grow the country's economy? That's where myself and my panelists decided to give the win. Essentially, from this side of the House, we hear that no, in as much as import is important, you're taking away jobs, because these are jobs that could have been produced, and these are items that could have been produced by our own citizens within our own country. That is what we hear from this side of the House. We feel it's very important that you have people, actual Namibians, producing their own goods in order for them to create an income for this side of the House. This side of the House tells us that no, in as much as employment is important and the economy is important, there are a number of people, or several people of our own country, work for multinational organizations, and these are your people that are the minority group. These are the people that are directly marginalized the moment you remove imports. So based on that final clash, but I'll also go back to the two, we decided to give the debate to side opposition. Why? We believe that opposition was able to create a world whereby we are facing the reality of what is actually happening. In as much as proposition was showing us the world that Namibia is trying to become one day, it was not enough for you to paint a utopia to the judge and tell us that this is how it's going to happen. I would have liked it if you told us that, listen, it's not
a well-deserved win there, but let's not forget that our newcomers made it to the finals. With that being said, we hope to see you guys again in our next season, but please do stay tuned as we announce our Public's Choice Award winner.